What is happening, Cryptosomniacs? This is Jason here today with David from TrueUSD. We are going to talk stablecoins and get into why it might be a better alternative than Tether and more right here on Cryptosomniac. Stay tuned. All right, what's happening? Welcome, welcome. David, thanks for making time to come on today. We met at Crypto Invest Summit and hit it off, had a fun little co-interview on Crypto Beatles channel. And, a lot of people in our community are really afraid of Tether and are pretty excited. A lot more people have been speculating on what other stable coins, TUSD has been the one for recent times. People have started to speculate on the Gemini and the Circles version, but I thought it was very interesting to run into you guys because very often we were saying I would trust this more than I would trust Tether. There are some reasons, but we'll pretend I don't have them, and I can ask you some dumb questions and see if we can get to the bottom of the project. You want to give
Perfect. Sounds good. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm up here at the Trust Token TrueUSD offices in San Francisco. So we're based in San Francisco, and it's great to be here.
Nice, man. Well, I appreciate you making time to come on. We'll just go ahead and get into it. So how long have you been aware of cryptocurrency, and how long have you been operating in the space full time? So I find that there's always a curve between found out about crypto in X and then somewhere along the line became a believer and jumped in head first. So tell us a little bit about your story there.
Yeah, definitely. My story follows a similar path there. So I found out probably back in 2013 or so, 2012, 2013. Had friends who were mining, and like everyone else, should have gotten in at that time. But really got interested in the distributed nature of just how the whole network was working, and separate from just the currency, but more the blockchain, the distributed governance side. So I actually went into several projects organizing helping on a decentralized housing network around the world, and then I was working on a distributed university and various kind of distributed systems around the world before I really jumped in to this project just under a year ago. And so we launched in officially January. We went live on exchange with TrueUSD in March. So I've been with Trust Token and TrueUSD for just about a year now, and I'm really happy with where this project is going.
Yeah, it's been cool. I mean, there's obviously a lot of FUD surrounding Tether, a so-called stablecoin that can't manage to stay at $1. It's causing massive arbitrage opportunities across exchanges, but they aren't really there. I've noticed a number of people asking about, the difference on Coinbase versus here, and I'm like, no, it's because Tether still isn't worth $1. Yeah, and they're like, oh, rats. Says,
right.
You can't.
Yeah, it's definitely this issue has come to the forefront in the last couple of weeks. On October 15th, obviously Tether kind of took a slide and made a lot of people aware of the importance of transparency and trust in this whole industry, and how important it is to really know who you're dealing with when, especially in crypto, where you're sending large amounts of money around the world. The more you know about kind of the underlying infrastructure, the better. And so for us, it's really exciting that people started paying attention to the important thing that's going to drive adoption in this industry, which is really this underlying trust infrastructure, where people have a better sense of what's going on and who the people are underneath kind of the projects that are happening.
I think stability as well, right? I mean, if we're really, everybody talks about a store of value, and if you've got an asset that's ultra volatile, that's not really a good store of value necessarily. I mean, we've started to see Bitcoin maybe find the bottom, or at least it's been range bound for quite some time and doesn't seem to break much below that $6,000 level, but ultimately it could at any time. And so, I think a lot of long-term investors are really considering, most people that are traditional investor mindset are looking for a place to park their money and let that money become more money over time. Not like I
Right.
parked it there and maybe it's totally gone tomorrow, or maybe I have 500 times as much the next day. You know,
Right.
so
Yeah, and I should just kind of zoom out a second and explain, because you in your intro you mentioned, you know, I'm with TrueUSD. Our bigger platform is Trust Token, and we're really connecting. We're a bridge between traditional assets and blockchains, and so TrueUSD is kind of the first asset token that's been launched on the platform, and so it is an example of a great store of value within your confidence of the US dollar and the underlying asset that it's pegged to. And of course, what's next is then offering people the ability to more easily choose between these assets. So tokenizing more currencies so that people can more freely choose between what they think is stable and really go into that.
So with that, and you know, you don't have to disclose anything that's not on the roadmap publicly, obviously, but do you guys plan to, you know, are there going to be like something that's pegged to Bitcoin if that ever becomes something that you consider a stable asset, or are you thinking more about like securitizing precious metals or something to that effect, or tokenizing rather precious metals?
Sure. I mean, that's a really good question. The thing with something like, we're definitely on our roadmap, it's unlocking the value of traditional assets. So opening up kind of liquidity for traditional assets like real estate is going to be a big one for us, and other commodities. Sure. The thing with tokenizing something like Bitcoin or other crypto, or kind of being pegged to that, is that it's almost like you don't get very much benefit, or as much benefit as unlocking a traditional asset. And so for us, we're going kind of for the biggest potential first, where you have trillions of dollars around the world that are locked up in traditional assets. And we have this infrastructure now in place with blockchain technology that really allows us to unlock all of that value. And so we're really focused on kind of this big shift in money from traditional assets, opening that up and allowing more people to access those assets.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't really realize is part of what's powerful about cryptocurrency, is if people really are able to have all of their assets become more liquid in this way. You know, I always use the example of if you've got a bunch of extra cell phone minutes or something on there, and there was a way to, you know, if your plan has X amount of extra rollover minutes, and you're like, well, I'm never going to use these because I don't chat on the phone, so I'm going to go ahead and put these on the open market. Even though you just paid your phone bills, a portion of that effectively comes back to you and becomes liquid again. Again, there's not really a system in place. I'm just using a hypothetical.
Sure.
Or, you know,
yeah, definitely
power at your house or something.
Yeah, there's basically, we think about it in there's two sides of this, and one side is liquidity and one side is access. So we're really, you know, blockchain really enables people to, like you were just mentioning, provide liquidity for their own assets, whether you're a landowner in San Francisco or you're living in rural India. You know, we want to be able to provide ways that you can all of a sudden make your asset more liquid. And on the other side, it's access. So enabling anyone around the world to have access all of a sudden to the US dollar if their currency is going through hyperinflation, or have access to real estate investments in downtown San Francisco, even if it's just a small percentage. And that's where you were asking about a stable store of value. It's yes, a stable store of value is really attractive to someone in a country undergoing hyperinflation. Yeah. But if you can, it's even more attractive even to be able to all of a sudden park your currency, not just in a stable store of value, but in an investment that's more secure in a place that you would otherwise not be able to invest. Sure. And so that's really what's exciting for us too.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty powerful thing. You know, a lot of projects talk about banking the unbanked, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know how many of them are taking steps to help that. Are you guys, are you making inroads in any of these hyperinflated nations, Cyprus, Venezuela, Greece, anything like that? I mean, can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's on our radar as far as developing partnerships and developing ways to reach more people. Currently, we've been so hyper-focused on TrueUSD and on currencies that that's almost kind of the next phase that we're preparing for, and we're developing partnerships in that area because ultimately we do want to see a bigger shift in how these assets are moved onto the blockchain. And TrueUSD is kind of like a couple $1 billion test case as far as like what's possible for like a bigger market that we're really kind of excited to move into.
Very cool. I know. So a question I have to ask, because I like to at least try to educate myself before I get into conversations that get a little technical. So I started reading up on stablecoins, recently, just wanting to know more about it. And I know there's a difference between asset-backed and cryptographically backed. After reading about how TUSD works, I'm not really sure which is which. I mean, obviously you guys have a back, it's pegged to the dollar, but is it the cryptography that is ensuring that, because with the burn and mint process, or can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So as people are becoming more aware of stable coins, people are like you're saying, starting to educate themselves about the different models, and there's trade-offs to the different models. And there are generally 3 categories of stable coins. So there's algorithmic, where there's an algorithm which is really balancing the burn and mint ratios. There's crypto-backed. You can see something like DAI or something like that is like a combination of some of these things. And a lot of the projects are combinations, but these are generally the 3. So the first algorithmic, the second crypto-backed, the third asset-backed or fiat-backed. And so we are really considered a fiat-backed stablecoin. And so,
figured, yeah.
Yeah, and that's because we are 1-for-1 fully collateralized with US dollars. So for every TrueUSD that's out there, there's a TrueUSD sitting in the escrow account. And so when you view our attestations and of the underlying funds, which you should do, you can do on our blog, and they're published several times a month. They give an account of the tokens that are out there, as well as the funds in the escrow account. And so TrueUSD are really only ever printed when after funds hit the escrow account, and then when TrueUSD re-enter get sent back to the account, they're burned, and people can withdraw their cash after that. So it's really fully fiat backed, and we were the market leader in what we would call a regulated fiat backed earlier this year, where there hadn't really been a company that was fully transparent about the underlying fiat reserves that were backing it.
That's why Tether is flooding left and right, even back at the beginning of the year, and I think that's why a lot of our community immediately was like, oh, well, now there's this alternative, we should try this. So that was one of my dumb questions that I actually got answered in the course of doing the research. Was now I've forgotten my question. I hate it when that happens. Asset back.
Are we algorithmic crypto or asset back?
I thought of another question based on something you just said. It'll come to me. Because of the attestations. Specifically, that was the thing, right? I mean, Tether has kicked out how many auditors, and they supposedly are backed 1-for-1. And I didn't mean to make this a let's just talk bad about Tether stream,
right.
But obviously that's going to be your main competitor in the market right now. And so the fact that you guys actually are regularly going through the attestations.
Right.
And so can you speak a little bit about, because I think this is something that probably a lot of people don't understand, what is the difference between third-party audited and third-party attestation?
Sure. Yes, I mean, there's several concerns with Tether that I could speak about, and we'll start with the attestation. So an attestation is performed by an auditing company. Mm-hmm. It's just technically an audit is a different legal term for how you review all of the underlying documents. And so all of these are actually attestations that are provided by all of these companies. where you have an auditing company actually come in and attest to the underlying funds. It doesn't mean that they need to go in and do a full audit of the company to see the funds. They have a direct link with the bank account and attest to the actual funds in the account. And so it's actually just a legal difference where it's an auditing company providing an attestation, and there's different companies that will call it different things.
I mean, if they're looking at the bank balance, unless they're colluding with the banks, I think that's pretty, that'd be good enough for me anyway. I mean,
right, yeah.
For at least when we're talking about if they're specifically supposed to say it's pegged dollar for dollar, and there's a third party that says, yeah, we can see the bank account and they have that much.
Sure, yeah. And the other thing I would note around Tether, just like the other stable coins that are now coming out, like Gemini, USDC, they're also linked to an exchange. And so there's a lot of issues when you're linked to an exchange, such as, the actual underlying bank account, where are those funds actually being accounted for?
Yeah,
and there's not a lot of transparency of funds that are being used on exchanges or being used as collateral. And so you have kind of this wall that you can't see past with exchanges that is very common with exchanges in the crypto world.
Sure.
And that's why we've really chosen to, it's a dedicated account, it's held by a third party. The trust company that issues TrueUSD is also a third party. So we essentially try to stay as removed from the process as possible. And that's one of the differences with Tether, one of the problems with Tether that some of these other stable coins are also running into.
So with that, I mean, again, Tether is obviously the main competitor for you guys. Do you see, other than, obviously the attestations is a pretty strong thing. Do you see any other strong competitive advantages? Because you probably are a little bit savvier on the battle on the back end than I am. I was just like, they won't let an auditor come in, I'm not using it for Tether. But that's, you may be able to speak specifically to other competitive advantages that you find, at least between you and Tether, between TUSD and Tether.
Oh, between TrueUSD and Tether. I mean, I think I lied. You got cut out there for a second, so
sorry about that, man.
I missed some of your question. Could you repeat your question?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was just saying. I mean, I was speaking that I've largely just decided I trusted TUSD over Tether because Tether wouldn't let the auditor come in. So that was a competitive advantage in my opinion.
Yeah. Sure.
But I was going to say, if you have any other, you probably know more about what's going on in the back end. So are there other competitive advantages that you guys see with yours versus Tether?
Sure. I mean, definitely just the fact that we are regulated and based in the United States. So banks that we're using, trust companies that we're using are all within the United States. So we have a huge advantage, I would say, from a regulatory advantage as far as not just transparency, but as far as the actual trust of our partners and the people that we're working with. Let me just, I'm not sure if I'm cutting out here or not, so I'm going to actually...
Your video froze for a second, but the audio has been perfect, so... Uh-oh. Did we lose you? Oh, there we go.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, looking good.
All right, great. I had to switch my internet over. We're having some issues over here, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
All right, so to get to your question, you were asking about other advantages over Tether, and yeah, really what I would say is
I was going to say, or over the Gemini dollar or the USDC. I mean, really any of them. What are the advantages of you guys versus versus the other competitors in the market that people may be more familiar with?
Sure. So the big challenge right now is around not only regulation, but it's also liquidity, and so it's really in order to adequately supply and provide TrueUSD to the market, or any stablecoin to the market, you really need to have a pretty large market cap at this point. And so one of the advantages that we have is really around being having quite a lot of liquidity across many exchanges. And
You guys are listed
So
on a ton of exchanges.
yeah, we're listed on over 30 exchanges now. So as far as and 90 markets. So as far as being able to start to shift from Tether to TrueUSD or to another stablecoin, you really have to have that liquidity. Yeah. And right now, Tether still has the advantage of trading pairs. So if you're trading on Binance, it's still easier to trade against Tether if you want to trade against any number of pairs. And we're slowly starting to shift that over to quote currencies. So we're really focused on being the quote currency across exchanges. And that, in order to kind of push that forward, it really has to do with liquidity in the market, A, and B, being exchange independent. Because if you're not affiliated with an exchange, other exchanges are more likely to list you, and you don't have kind of a conflict of interest of being the only place where users can redeem through your own exchange. And so it's really, those are the two factors that we're really focused on, being exchange independent and providing enough liquidity.
Nice. I mean, those are two very, very important items. Obviously, liquidity is key in this market. And yeah, the more exchange listings, the better. And that's, I don't trade across a ton of different exchanges. I've probably got 4 or 5, 3 that I realistically use on a regular basis. And you're on all of those. So
great.
Yeah. So that's a cool thing. All right. Well, let's see. I guess while we're on the subject, we keep mentioning exchanges and traders using it. Do you think that people are ever going to actually use this as a stable coin, or rather as a payment method, right? Because if Bitcoin is super volatile and Ethereum is super volatile, I often talk to people that it's like we need to actually use this crypto as money in order for it to become normally acceptable as money, as people start to have to be familiar with that. Which you can't really do when, I mean, I'm not going to, if I think I buy this much Bitcoin today and it'll buy me a car today, but it'll buy me a house tomorrow, I'm waiting to spend that money, right? So do you think that stable coins in general are going to have a further market use beyond just providing a step out to traders?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the thing is, any project that you talk to today is basically talking about, that's launching in the crypto world, is essentially talking about integrating a stablecoin into their product.
Yeah.
And so you really have this huge demand for stablecoins in across products and across projects that are launching. And that's really just it essentially comes down to people actually being able to use this and to be able to use it as payment. It fulfills this ability for people to use crypto as a currency. And so even things like you had just mentioned, you were on a Bitcoin Cash on a show talking about Bitcoin Cash. Even a project like that, that's they're hyping using it as a currency,
yeah, sure.
But still, I mean, it's down 10% today. It was up 15% yesterday.
I made 20% on it a couple of days ago because of the
exactly. So
I sold.
Right, exactly. So and you didn't sell because you were buying a cup of coffee with it. You sold out of a speculative kind of move.
I sold because I made 20%.
Right, exactly. So that's something that, as with stable coins, they're really going to grow. They're really going to grow market adoption of crypto around the world. And you can get into a discussion of with different kind of degrees of crypto purism and like how we want that tied to underlying assets and to kind of more traditional assets. But at the end of the day, these traditional assets and stable coins that are fiat backed are really adding a huge value to the space as far as adoption goes and how these projects are going to be built out, because we can start to think less about speculation within these tools and these projects and focus on the technology that it can bring to the world and have a currency that's just able to function within it.
And so something that just occurred to me as you were talking is if people are used to taking a transaction fee for utilizing Bitcoin or Ethereum networks, etc., then unless they're moving large sums, a penny or two difference probably wouldn't make a, or a fraction of a cent difference if if it's fluctuating in value between exchanges, probably wouldn't make a huge difference because they're used to. I mean, we pay a bunch of our contractors in cryptocurrency, and they just know that it might be worth a little bit more than it was when I sent it to them, or it might be worth a little bit less, but it's like right around there, and so it's sort of like they've become used to a little bit of the volatility. So I suspect if you were paying in a stable coin and it fluctuated a tiny amount, that maybe that wouldn't be as bad, as they're evaluating against its fiat value. I don't know. I'm purely speculating on it. But.
Yeah, it's a good question. It also brings up the whole idea of fluctuation of price in across stablecoins, and we had talked about this on the Crypto Beatles podcast as well.
Yeah.
But this fluctuation in price really comes down to a trust of the underlying asset, and if you're able to redeem it, and if it's ever worth less than $1 or price less than $1, you can redeem it for $1, and so you're going to go and scoop that up.
Yeah, load up, sure.
Yeah, and so there are fluctuations, but really the market corrects itself as far as
I looked at you guys on the chart, and it's nice and stable. So it's spikes in tether here and there, but you guys are just it's a tiny little oscillation, but it's pretty.
Yeah, we've been since March 6th when we launched on Bittrex. It's really been we've had some early spikes in price with exchange listings as these bots really didn't know what to do with the stablecoin listing and started buying up a stablecoin. But the moment that actual humans started interacting with this and trusting the underlying asset, it is only worth $1, and it's worth exactly $1. So we've been happy to be stable over time.
Yeah. So I believe you guys are an ERC20 token, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Do you plan to stay in ERC20, or do you think that it would go to its own blockchain? Because I think that's another competitive advantage when I'm really thinking about it. Is without getting too far into the shill, that it's Monarch already supports it, right? It's already in a wallet. So the fact that any other wallet that supports ERC20 tokens could support it, I can't hold my tether anywhere. I have to leave it on the exchange, and I always am like, don't leave your money on the exchange. So, but you have no choice with tether. You can send it to another exchange and hope that they're more reliable. But I think that's pretty fantastic that that you can actually put it in a wallet, and in what I would imagine is probably multiple wallets.
Definitely, yeah, and we're definitely tied to the system at the time that is the most stable and secure for our users, and so that's Ethereum right now. It has the biggest developer community, and as far as the actual security audits, we've gone through 5 major security audits for our smart contracts. You just don't have the same type of security around other blockchains right now. But that being said, there could be other ones in the future that are more secure, better options, or building our own. We're open to all those possibilities, but right now we definitely like the security aspect, and we like the what you were just mentioning, where you can really hold it in across so many wallets, and you can store it offline or in cold storage. So if you're in a country with going through inflation, you can actually put this onto a hardware wallet or a paper wallet, and you can store it offline in a way where you really have secure access to your funds and don't have to keep it on exchanges necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's pretty huge. I mean, especially think about if you're like, the Syrian refugees or something to that effect, where you get to the border, and if you're carrying your precious metals and your fiat stack of paper money, they can take it away from you. But very likely, if they see your private keys, probably they don't know what it is, first of all. And they're like, I don't know. Or if they do, well, I guess if they do, you're in trouble. Maybe you should have hit your But I think it'd be a lot easier to. I mean, the solution there is just memorize your seed phrase, and you're good, right? So.
There's definitely a lot of exciting things. Simply the aspect of being able to memorize your seed phrases and keep it mentally. It's such a powerful thing for people to own their own currencies just in their head, and then be able to regenerate them.
Yeah, that was one of the things that when first time I read Internet of Money, it was just like every couple of pages, it just blew my mind thinking about like, oh yeah. That would actually be a real problem, and
Right.
because again, I mean, I'm a law-abiding American citizen, but I realize that all they need to do is label you as an enemy of the state. You're an insurgent now, and there goes all of your rights and everything else. So it's a nice hedge against. Again, it's true ownership of your money. If as long as it's not sitting on an exchange, you actually own your money. Whereas when your money's in the bank, maybe not so much. So I think that's a nice factor. And then, I think also maybe everybody having to remember their private keys will help people's memories improve. Because I don't know, you look like you're roughly about my age. And I remember when I used to memorize phone numbers like it was nothing. And ask me if I know anybody's phone number now off the top of my head. Like I remember my grandma's from when I was a kid. I can tell you my phone number and like my old office phone number, but it's
I would say like my memory is expanded to 6-digit like 2FA numbers. Like I can remember probably 6 digits now. After looking at 2FA.
All right, so let's see what other questions do I have. There was a couple. That I got from the community. I went into the Moon Lounge and was like, hey guys, I'm interviewing the Trust Token guys. What do you guys have any questions? So specifically, one of them wanted to know what legal jurisdiction are you based in, and what backup jurisdictions do you have available in the event of a regulatory change that turns it into an unfavorable business environment?
Great. Yeah. I mean, that's an excellent question. And I'll point first of all to a blog post that was just published by our Chief Regulatory Officer and Head of Legal. His name is Alex C. Levine, and he came from the SEC and CFTC and is now really spearheading our legal team in line with regulations in the U.S. And so we're currently based in the U.S. The trust companies that we work with are in Nevada, and so we're I would say working closely with regulators in both Nevada and across the country to have a really close pulse on where regulation is going. So as far as the question of where these jurisdictions are, it's within the U.S., and that's really important to us because we're using the dollar, we're tokenizing the dollar, and we want to be seen as the really most secure access to it, and so it's important for us to have those funds stored here.
That makes a lot of sense.
We definitely, yeah, of course, and so
a little dicey if you were in Malta or something. You're like, nah, we're an American company. It's like, are you though?
Right. Yeah, and it's I would say from the beginning we've been focused on regulation first, and sometimes to the detriment of our community, because we haven't been, we're really working hard on, for example, opening up a sale for Trust Token to the most amount of people possible. But due to regulation and the regulatory uncertainty in the landscape, we've had to keep it to accredited investors and really go a really secure path. And a lot of projects are now starting to do the same. But we did that from the beginning. We've had a legal team in-house from the beginning working on all of these issues, and we're working closely with regulators to craft the future laws around token offerings and around how crypto is regulated, because we definitely don't see it as something we're working against. The U.S. has generally come out in favor. They've by withholding some judgments, sure. They have essentially come out in favor of a lot of crypto activity and are now in the decision process as far as how to regulate that. And so it's exciting being one of the companies that's really able to craft that with the government here. Yeah.
So then, are you guys technically a security token?
Technically, so we have a platform which is Trust Token,
right.
And the first product on the first asset-backed token on the platform is TrueUSD, which is definitely a utility because it's not meant to ever increase or decrease in value.
Yeah, that's why I was like, how could that be a security? Because there is no intention. It doesn't pay dividends, and there's no intention for it to go up in value. So that would just by definition not be a security.
So there's no question about TrueUSD being a utility. I was speaking more towards the Trust Token platform,
sure.
And we've really structured that in a way where it has a utility. It is focused on being a utility token, but it's fully structured to be security if it has to be. And so we're really working on that. But yeah, for TrueUSD, definitely utility, not meant to go up or down in value. It's meant to stay in one value. That's kind of the point.
Yeah, that's why when you started talking about KYC and stuff, I was like, well, why? I give you $1, you give me a TUSD. That's I do not need a receipt for that donut. That was a Mitch Hedberg joke, in case you missed it.
Nice.
So, all right, well, that's a solid answer. I mean, ultimately, if you're trying to be, if you're tokenizing the American dollar and you're trying to be a legitimate company by all SEC guidelines, then why not park it in the United States? This is where you're operating.
Yeah.
All right. So then, the next one was, the most important thing for stablecoins, if they claim to be backed by the dollar, can they actually be exchanged for USD? And this was one of the users saying, this is why I prefer the USDC and GUSD, because I can sell it back to USD anytime. TUSD you can as well, but $10,000 minimum when they launched. Is that still the case? And then what he really said was not sure how they will proceed for retail investors. So perhaps you could speak to that a little bit? Did I articulate the question?
Yeah, definitely. A couple things on that front. So first, as I mentioned earlier, because GUSD and Circle are both associated with exchanges, they're built right into exchanges. There's downsides to that. We've gone with an exchange agnostic approach where we've really partnered with many exchanges, some of which are starting to offer similar options. So for example, if you go on Bittrex right now, you can do exactly the same thing as you could on Poloniex or on Gemini, where you can trade TrueUSD to US dollars. And so we are really building some of these on-ramps between fiat and crypto across exchanges. So that's kind of the first thing I would say is that you are able to do that already on Bittrex right now. You can trade $1 for $1 and just fully redeem it. And we're working with a number of exchanges to be able to offer that. And so that there's not just one exchange that you're going back to redeem in whatever amount, but you can really do that across kind of as an underlying protocol across exchanges for a crypto to fiat on-ramp, off-ramp. The second thing that you mentioned was how you can redeem and purchase and redeem right now. We've really been focusing on lowering that amount. And so it is still $10,000 to purchase and redeem directly through us. The holdup on there is actually through the trust company. And so we're actively working to add the support to be able to lower that. So that should be rolling out. Soon we'll be making announcements around that. But that's really one of our focuses is to be able to purchase and redeem any amount directly through us. That being said, you can already do it on exchanges, and we would actually prefer, in the long run, we want to be able to easily offer that to customers and traders who want to purchase and redeem, but we want to make things as easy as possible. And if you can skip the step of sending out of an exchange and just be able to trade right in an exchange between a dollar and a stable coin, that's better for the trader. So we're gonna
makes way more sense because then you're not paying network fees to move your money around. That's another thing that I think you got to keep in mind when you're utilizing cryptocurrency is every time you take it out of your left pocket and put it in your right pocket, it costs you a couple of pennies.
Exactly. And that starts to add up, and then. So ultimately, if you, for example, are Gemini and you're sending GUSD around. You can send it back to Gemini to redeem. Ultimately, they can still determine the fees on that. We think that if you open up more markets to be able to redeem, people are going to send it to where it's the cheapest option, and all of a sudden you have a market that's competing to lower prices for customers and for traders, and that's ultimately what we want. We want people to be able to use this stuff for as cheap as possible, just like dollar bills. So that's kind of our goal, to bring the dollar bill to the crypto world and to make that as cheap as possible.
Nice. I like hearing that. It's in a world where as I go to more and more conferences, and I got into crypto because I'm a little bit of a crypto anarchist, right? I like the whole decentralization aspect, take the power back, and all that. And I've noticed in the last 6 months, particularly, the ethos, the needle is moving, where everybody's like, no, we want the regulation now, and not to say that I don't want regulation. I don't want it to be so easy to manipulate, but I also don't want it to be yoked with a mantle of control. So I guess what my point is that I'm getting at is I've seen the shift so much to where everybody's starting to go, oh no, we want these derivative products now and these custodial solutions and all of these things that are like, that's not what did you guys miss the whole point of why this started in the first place?
Right. And yeah, I think there's really, I would say, a lot of people at Trust Token, TrueUSD really come from both backgrounds, and so there's just different options for different people, and some of these solutions are going to be right for people, and then we might be really pumped about like Zcash or something like in the background, or like using different solutions, right? So like we're really excited about all the different options of crypto. And we're trying to provide the best solution within this area, which is really geared towards a specific audience and a specific use case for crypto, while not eliminating any of the other ones. So we like to think about just adding more value to the space and adding more options.
Plenty of room in the sandbox. There's plenty of room for all of us. That's what I like about this community. Is a traditional business a little more cutthroat. Crypto is a little more collaborative, it seems to me.
Definitely, yeah.
People, a lot of like even projects that you would think, oh, these might be direct competitors, are like, let's figure out how we can collaborate and just help.
Yeah, and that's definitely still the case in this space generally. There's it might seem like there's just this huge amount of competition from the outside, but we go to conferences around the world and generally meet up and chat with all these projects and are friends with them, and everyone's really trying to support each other to make this whole industry to grow the whole industry as a whole. So that's really the approach we take, and so we really support a lot of these other projects and hope for the best for all of us as far as the industry growing.
That's what I like to hear, man. That's I just once I met you, I was like, I've tried to shy away from lately. More so, I'm just really trying to connect with the people and bring the people on that I've connected with, and I'm like, ooh, I like your ethos. I like the way you think, and bringing different YouTubers on the Trader Talk shows, and I've been trying to just interview people that are doing useful and innovative things in the space, or at least are operating from a similar mindset that I guess I started from. So it's a pleasure to hear that not every coin out there is just out to maximize token value and walk out. 'Cause I feel like it's been a lot of that, unfortunately.
There has, yeah.
Cool, man. Well, that's the majority of my questions, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, the only other thing, what I'll say, this is, I harp on mainstream adoption a lot. So what do you think what's the biggest challenge facing mainstream adoption right now for cryptocurrency?
Sure. I mean, I think if you just look at how the market has moved over the last year, I think that's going to be a big challenge for people. And so I think that's why you're seeing these big waves now about security tokens are coming out, or asset tokens, or things that are, I would say, like bridging more traditional financial institutions and crypto, and seen as more secure. I do think that's a huge wave of what's to come as far as the whole crypto space goes.
Yeah.
And that is there are a lot of exciting aspects of that. But I would say that people have become really disillusioned over the last year, as you know, with what's happened with the prices.
You never hear Wen Moon anymore. It's crazy.
Right. But I do think as far as that goes, it happens overnight and it happens so quickly where the mood just changes immediately. Yeah. And so I would say as far as kind of mass adoption and participation in the space, I think that could happen overnight as far as trading activity goes. Sure. But we're definitely really excited here about actual use cases. Yeah. And when people are less Wen Moon about it, then actual stuff gets built. And so we've seen just more activity over the last 6 months than ever before. So behind the scenes, there's really this explosion of projects and that's happening right now. And it's really incredible to kind of be experiencing that, because people talk about price, people talk about adoption, but the tools are really getting built right now. Yeah. And there's been only an explosion as far as people entering the space, projects launching, funding coming in. It's really, really an exciting time. And so I would urge people to really keep an eye out for some of these new projects that are launching, that have working products, have
that's the key right there. If they exactly. Go, look, we built this for you. Now we're trying to raise some money to do this, but we already built this. Like that's
right. The phase of just aimlessly raising money based on a white paper. I think
we have a really good idea. We're really smart. Give us all the money.
Yeah, so I think people have figured out that it's really about building products, shipping products, and having great teams that can execute and get things out there. And that's really what's going to drive this next wave, I think, is great teams building stuff and offering actual products to people that people can start using. So, and I don't think that's too far away.
Yeah, it seems like it's right around the corner. Like I talk about this with my community, and I talk about it on the channel a lot. We built a lot of roads. Like there's a lot of roads connecting cities now. We just need more people to build some cars on top of these roads so that we can start driving between these places we want to go.
Definitely, yeah. It's an exciting time.
Right on, man. Well, that puts us right at the hour here. So, is there anything else you want to shout out? Do you want want people to follow you on Twitter or check you guys out on social media or anything like that? Feel free to shill away on it.
Absolutely, of course. Yes, we're very active on Twitter at Trust Token, and as well as on Telegram. We've got a bunch of people, so you can jump in there and ask your questions. Twitter is definitely the best place to reach us. So tweet at us, comment, participate. We're there, and we are engaging with people who are asking questions. So please engage, and we're really excited to participate with our community. It's what excites us, is the traders in the space using our products and hearing how that's going and making it better. So really jump in, reach out, participate, and we'll see you online.
Right on, man. Well, hey, thanks again for making time. And let's get Tori on one of these days, and let's get into the nitty gritty. I'm gonna have to do some more studying so I can have an intelligent conversation. Maybe we'll have him and Snay talk.
Absolutely, yeah. Talk. I will add one more shill for our hiring team. We're constantly hiring across all departments as fast as we possibly can. I mentioned all these projects growing quickly. It's people entering the space and joining. So.
Yes, that's huge, man. You want a career in blockchain? Here's a lead for you guys. Like, let's go check it out.
Definitely, we're hiring across all areas, especially engineers, of course, to be building this stuff. But across marketing, engineering, biz ops, all the departments. So apply, and we'd love to see your resume.
That's super cool, man. I didn't even know that we were going to get an extra thing like that, but that's a little bonus, man. I don't have a problem with you talking about that at all. Get a career in blockchain. It's awesome to work in this space. It's unbelievable, right? I mean, so many times I'm like, I can't believe this is what we get to do for work.
Yeah.
You know, we're shaping the future, as idealistic or naive as that may sound. That's what we're doing. It's pretty exciting.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, and this has been fun, and look forward to your chat with Tori as well in the future.
Right on. Sounds good. All right. This is Jason from Cryptosomniac here with David from Trust Token. Keep your stop losses tight. We'll talk to you later.